This is Mike number one. Mike number one, isn't this a lot of fun? There's a little Spinal Tap reference there for you guys. Good morning all, good morning. Yes, Sky, I hope the mic is on. That's a reference to a stream I had to delete because I did about 2 hours without the microphone on. So hopefully you can hear me. Welcome everybody, my name is Simon, this is Flight Past, and we are discussing today the Falklands War. We're continuing our story of the Falklands War, and we've got to the surrender of the Argentinians at Goose Green on the 29th of May 1982. For all those who are new to the channel, they're always the ones who, and some people who always pop in at this time, so that you don't waste any of your time, I'm going to tell you now, this is a sort of like a historical podcast discussion, uses Microsoft Flight Simulator's satellite technology, essentially to look at the battlefields and parts of history and get a deeper understanding of it from the air, to see basically how distances, terrain, topography affects what went on. We've done a number of series up to date. The channel's still new. As you can see, the the follower goal there was quite low. So if you do follow on Twitch or YouTube, then you're one of the pioneers. And as you can see there with Guy at the back, if you comment, you'll be on the left-hand side of the screen. So you're essentially being my co-pilot. I think Twitch is just about to go into an advert, so I'll just waffle on for a bit whilst that goes on. For anybody who's premium Twitch or watching on YouTube, this is essentially a channel where I lead discussion. I fly live, everything is live, there's no edits. So you'll see I will make mistakes. I fly into mountains, I crash a lot, I make mistakes in errors on, I say the wrong dates sometimes. So your job essentially is to make sure that the aircraft doesn't crash and that all my facts are correct. Feel free to join in, feel free to comment, ask if questions or give any information you have, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are more knowledgeable than I am, and so it's just a sort of a cool place to sort of chill out for a few hours discussing history. So if you're one of those guys or girls who loves history and has your finger in the map all the time, this is the sort of channel for you. Previous playlists that we've done, if the Falklands War isn't your thing, go back and look on YouTube. You'll see subjects on D-Day in 1944, and we've also got one on the Waterloo campaign, the 100 Days, 1815, where we follow Napoleon all the way to Waterloo from Elba, and then to his exile in St. Helena. What you'll find as well is I'll break this up every 20 minutes and take a break, so you can grab a cup of tea or something like that. If you have got Microsoft Flight Simulator, please feel free to join in. I'm on the European West server. If you've probably won't be that many people flying down in the Falkland Islands, so you should be able to find where we are, and you can join in and fly along with me. And as I say, I have run out of ado, so we will proceed. So let's jump in the helicopter and have a look where we are for a start. This is the Huey, and we're going to take off here. And we are currently at Goose Green airfield. So if you've have just joined us, you can go back and check out previous streams, and we've talked about 2 para and their attack along this isthmus to this settlement here, and this is essentially where we've left it. Now this stream that we're going to do today was going to be probably about a couple of hours. We're going to look at something which I'm calling the deadly lull. And it's a period of time between this battle here at Goose Green, which the Argentinians surrendered on the 29th of May 1982. And then we're going to talk about the period essentially down the south part of this island here, along this coast here, from the 29th of May 1982 to the disaster that was at Fitzroy on the 8th of June 1982. It's a deadly lull because even though this will end in a disaster, which many of you probably know what I'm talking about, in between these two dates there is a series of events that occur, series of command changes and troop movements that will lead to that error that occurs on the 8th of June and leaves a significant amount of British troops killed and wounded from the bombing of the Sir Galahad on the 8th of June. And it is a disaster, there's no doubt that, but it could have been an absolute catastrophe because there's a story here that not many people know about, and I think it's important that we concentrate on this part of the story. Now, essentially what we got as well is people normally at this point are concentrating on the movement of the paratroopers of 3 para and 42 commando, 45 commando, and the movement of essentially of these troops as they tab, if you're a paratrooper, or a yomp if you're a Royal Marine, across the north part of the island. And that's from a place essentially over here, from San Carlos over to an area called initially Teal Inlet in the Salvador Bay, to the north of the island, and then to Estancia, where essentially Brigadier Thompson is moving his troops forward to establish a forward operating basis in the north, and essentially to the building up behind Mount Kent. Now, a lot of the air resources that are remaining, because remember the Atlantic conveyor was hit just around, I think it was the 25th of May. Now, the Atlantic conveyor was hit, and it was carrying 4 Chinooks and some helicopters and lots of tent equipment. And essentially, it changes the whole plan of Thompson, tried to move his land forces across the island. So rather than now being airlifted, the troops being airlifted, they have to walk. And any aircraft that remains are highly sought after. And on the 30th of May 1982, the Thompson decides that the air resources would be given to the SAS and 42 Commando, who had essentially seen an opportunity to seize Mount Kent. And Mount Kent was an important position to take because it would be overlooking the forward distribution points, forward supply points that the army was considering to set up around Teal Inlet and Estancia House. in the Salvador Bay. So it was essential that they captured this Mount Kent. Now we will go up and have a look at that yomp or tab in later streams. But for this purpose of this stream, remember then that essentially the army now have got sort of a foothold, or getting a foothold on Mount Kent, and this allows artillery to be moved up into the lee of Mount Kent from Stanley. And so just remember that this artillery is in that position there. Other little sort of things that are happening at this time, and again we could probably look into it, but that'll be later in another stream. There's a Royal Marine Mountain and Arctic Warfare cadre. They are attacking special forces at a place called Top Marlow House. And there's a number of aircraft still being shot down. A C-130 transport aircraft is shot down by a Sea Harrier. But we'll get to this, the subject of today now, and that is it's called the Deadly Lull. And essentially what's happening is that what we see is a number of reinforcements are arriving on the QE2, and this is 5th Army Brigade. And this Army Brigade is arriving, and what is going to happen is there is a number of more senior army figures arrive, and this means that the chain of command starts to change. We start seeing Major General Jeremy Moore takes over from Thompson. We have Wilson, Brigadier Wilson will arrive, and he will essentially take over from Chris Keeble, Major Chris Keeble, who was took over from Colonel H. Jones down here, as we saw. And so there's a number of command positions are going to be changing, and the lines of communication, the sort of the chain of command is confused at this point. People don't know whether they're reporting out to Admiral Woodward of the task force or directly back to Northwood in the UK. And so just bear in mind then that this is a period of confusion. As I say, command is confused, chains of command are confused, communications are difficult. And so you can just see where I'm going here with this. This is going to be a factor that is going to start to affect the events of the next 9 days leading up to this disaster at Fitzroy Bay. Now, when the army's coming down, Major General Jeremy Moore, actually there's an issue with the QE2 communications, and they're out of sort of communications for a while. And there's been some talk of there being promises to the Army Brigade. Now, these guys coming down are essentially 2nd Battalion Scots Guards, the Welsh Guards, I think the Gurkhas are involved, and they're coming in. Now, the British Army have a culture of encouraging inter-service rivalry, and it's a culture that is arguably trains up the best army, and it's fantastic during peacetime. But when it comes to this sort of wartime, these inter-service rivalries can get in the way. And when this Army Brigade turns down, there's an issue. They don't want... Now, they will be turning up and being offloaded at San Carlos Bay. And essentially, the Army don't want to be following the Marines. They don't want to be following the Navy. So they won't follow 45 Commando across the island and walk it across the island. So that's to them is something that they won't do. And even though when they arrive, they don't have their own logistics network, And so what they should have been done is been sent to St. Carlos Bay, and they could have relieved 40 Commando, and then they could have moved down to Goose Green and relieved 2 Para. They essentially had come down, they hadn't got their own logistical supply, and also they were fresh from ceremonial duties back in the UK, so weren't completely up to speed. The Gurkhas couldn't take a lead role because the Argentines were playing up on their essentially being a mercenary sort of nature to them, and they also wouldn't allow the guards wouldn't allow the Gurkhas to show them up. So you can see now that there's a sort of what to do with these people. Now, essentially what that happens is that or what should have happened as well is that the command, Jeremy Moores of the world, Thompsons of the world, going back to northward, and essentially, but the ultimate responsibility was John Knott, who's the defence minister. He should have nipped this in the bud and said, damn inter-service rivalries, this is what's going to happen. But he was weak and it didn't step in. And so what basically happens then is that they decide that they will put in a southern front. And it was a front which is essentially where I am along the coast from where I am now, essentially coming up to Stanley from a position around about here, and it wasn't necessary for it to be done, but it felt that it was the best use of this new force. The issue that we have with it is that the Argentines had been expecting an invasion from that direction. That's the direction that they believed it would come from, and the sites that are chosen, Bluff Cove, Fitzroy, could be seen from Mount Harriet, and the Argentine positions to the north east of those positions. So any movements down there and movements into that area would be seen, and therefore they were vulnerable to air attacks being called in. Now, the other issue for this was that essentially that because they didn't bring their own logistics, they would essentially, these forces be landing here in San Carlos Bay that had become a sort of a protected area from air attacks. But it meant that to get to this area over here, essentially in this area here, from San Carlos Bay, meant that there would have to be a long journey around the south of the Falklands, around this area called Lafonia, in order to drop these troops off in this area over here. Now, of course, that means that they are exposed for a long time going around that south portion. They can be observed by Argentinian forces, and so the risk is high that they will be spotted. The journey is longer. Yes, the South Atlantic winters are evenings are long, but it did mean that for transport to take these troops around the island, offload them, and then get back to the relative safety of San Carlos was going to be a close run thing. And the other thing as well, what we need to note, and we'll come to it as well, is there is a number of issues with this side as well, in terms of this part of the coastline from essentially Lively Island, which is here, up to Fitzroy and Bluff Cove, is where these kelp fields are. So it makes it for difficult navigation. There's these floating rafts of reeds that can foul propellers and rudders. And so that was an issue that was needed. And two, the Exocet threat from Stanley. The Royal Navy believed that the Exocet had a range from Stanley around about 20 miles. But it turns out that the position where they thought they were firing it from wasn't a fixed position. The actual Exocets were the Argentines had it on a lorry, and it was mobile, and so they could move it further south. So the range was actually more like 25 miles. So and that's the difference between, say, being able to fire at a position here and a position down just to the north of Lively Island. So bear all those sort of things in mind as we talk about the next events coming up. So the 3rd of June then, and what we're doing, we're just poodling along here on the south part of East, the middle section of East Island. And on the 3rd of June, Brigadier Wilson arrives with the 5th Brigade, and he flies down to Goose Green, which is the area which we've just left. See, you're supposed to be in charge. Crash. The area we just left, that isthmus. So Brigadier Wilson flies down there, and he it basically comes down. He learns from a local resident there that there is a telephone at a place called Swan Inlet House, and that's Swan Inlet House telephone links to the settlement of Fitzroy. So Major Chris Keeble is he's the guy who took the surrender at Goose Green. He was about to be relieved, but he wanted to essentially exploit this information, and Brigadier Wilson authorizes him, and they take a small party in these scout helicopters, these sort of reconnaissance helicopters, lightweight things, and of course you guys are all flight simmers, so you'll know what a scout helicopter is. And he sends these members of 2 para off in these 5 scout helicopters to find this house, and we're just going to do that now. So we're pretend this Huey is a scout, and we're going to be Major Chris Keeble on the 3rd of June, flying forwards to Swan Inlet House. Now, Swan Inlet is this sort of neck that we can see here, and the house is just about there. So let's go and see if we can find that. And so I don't think this is no, this isn't it here. We could head north. I think it's over here at this area where the white dot is now. When I come, I think what I'll do now is I'll because the for some reason we seem to be getting a bit blocky on the stream, so I'm going to take a quick break and grab a glass of water. So if you're watching on Twitch, I'll be back in a couple of minutes, and if you're watching on YouTube, then it'll be I'll break it up into parts, and you can watch it in parts on YouTube. So please like, subscribe, and do all that sort of stuff. And the music you'll hear as well is by me. And if you want it, it's on Bandcamp, and you can just search for E Piraten, and you'll find that music there. And that's a gift from me to you for watching. So I'll be back in a couple of seconds. Well, welcome back to Fly Past. My name is Simon. Good to see you. We are flying in the Huey over the Falkland Islands, and we're looking into the deadly lull, the period between the surrender of the Argentines at Goose Green and the bombing of the Sir Galahad on the 8th of June at Bluff Cove. We are halfway in between at the moment, and we're trying to find a place called Swan Inlet House. Now this little inlet here is called Swan Inlet, and the house we're looking for is around about here. And I'll tell you why in a second. By the way, I just want to say thank you to the people who have followed and liked and all that sort of stuff. So a big shout out. I can see people I didn't mention. SimPilot82, thank you very much for the follow. Roly M on YouTube, thanks very much. We've also got a very serious sounding Era Napoleonica. Thank you very much for the follow. They're obviously enjoying the Waterloo playlist. Gand London on Twitch, and Barton 12 Merit, yeah, thank you very much for all those people for following. Very young channel, so it's good to see that some people think that what I say is pretty cool. Yeah, we're here. We're trying to find a Swan Inlet House. And why are we trying to find it? Well, we're trying to find it because when the 5th Brigade of the Army arrives, Brigadier Wilson flies down to basically assess Goose Green, and finds out from a local there that there is a telephone line from Swan Inlet House, which I believe is where this white dot is here. Anyway, there's a telephone wire from Swan Inlet House to the settlement of Fitzroy, and what they're trying to do basically is establish a 5th Brigade, a southern front down to the south of Stanley, even though it doesn't really make sense because the 5th Brigade haven't got their own logistical support, but because of inter-service rivalry, the army can't be seen to follow the Marines who are yomping across the northern part of the island, and so they're trying to establish a front down here, and this is Swan Inlet House. Now, so Brigadier Wilson, on the 3rd of June 1982, gives Major Chris Keeble, who was the guy who took over from Colonel H. Jones when he was killed during the Battle of Goose Green. He gives Chris Keeble the permission to fly some 2-para here in these very limited aircraft that they've got now, these 5 Scout aircraft. They arrive here and they essentially phone forwards, using the telephone, they phone forwards to Fitzroy, the locals there, and he discovers from them that the Argentines have actually abandoned Fitzroy and Bluff Cove and pulled back into the hills surrounding Stanley. And we're talking about this being the deadly lull, and if you've just joined in, there's a sequence of events that are happening and things that are going on that are going to lead to this a near disaster. Oh no, it's going to lead to the disaster at Bluff Cove, but it would almost led to an absolute catastrophe, almost a war-ending catastrophe in this sort of week that between Goose Green and the 8th of June. One of the ones was because of these new commanders are arriving on the QE2 with 5th Brigade. They're outranking some of the guys already here. So we're seeing a change of command going on. Major General Jeremy Moore is taking over from Brigadier Thompson. And Brigadier Wilson is moving down to take over the sort of 2-para. And what you're getting essentially is a lot of changes in command structure, and the chain of command is confused. You've got 2 services operating down here. The Royal Navy with Woodward, who believes he should be overall charge, but a lot of these army guys are bypassing Woodward and going back to the headquarters in Northwood in the UK. So there's an issue. You can see how there's going to be some issues arising because of that. And then what we got is this essentially the inter-service rivalry, meaning that the army brigades, the 2nd Battalion of Scots Guards and the Welsh Guards and the Gurkhas, they don't want to be taking over guard duty from commandos and Royal Marines or even following them across the island. They want to be at the forefront. But the issue is that they haven't got their own supply, logistical supplies, and they're fresh from ceremonial duties. And the Gurkhas couldn't be seen to lead because they were deemed, Argentinians would be using it as propaganda to say that the British were essentially using mercenaries. And the other issue, of course, with this southern attack is that with the troops landing at San Carlos Bay, they're relatively safe now because it's got anti-aircraft facilities. It means that the logistical support and the troop transport of this brigade has to come all the way around the south of the East Island, around this area called Lafonia. And even though it's winter down here and the nights are long, it meant that there was a push to get these ships around the south of the island, unload their human transport, and logistical supplies, and then get back to San Carlos in the relative safety of the night. It also meant that the Bluff Cove and Fitzroy could actually be observed by Argentine positions in the mountains around Stanley, and there's a risk, of course, of that. But there are Argentine troops stationed on the south part of East Falkland, and the ships would be spotted going around. So there's a lot of dangers involved. But having heard that this settlement is empty, the Fitzroy, of Argentine troops, the sort of paratroop ethos mentality training kicks in, and they're all about initiative and showing initiative and moving fast and all this sort of stuff. And this is one of the cases where it probably wasn't a great idea to do. Now, when Wilson hears that Fitzroy is not hasn't got Argentine troops in it, he thinks it's a perfect opportunity to seize it, and he commandeers the last remaining Chinook and the 5 scout helicopters, and he essentially flies a company of 2 para to occupy Fitzroy. So let's head that way. We'll head to from Swan Inlet House, and we'll fly to Fitzroy. So it's going to take a little while to get over that. Just a quick heads up. This here is actually the new RAF base, or relatively new now, RAF base that was built after the war. It's called RAF Mount Pleasant. It's got a longer runway, so it allows transport aircraft from the UK to get down here. There's this over here is Mare Harbour, and you can see how all the supplies were brought in. You get the relatively flat land here, and I think if you can just see here, that mountain there, it's that's actually Mount Pleasant, and we'll be coming back here in a minute anyway. And below us, I think is the Swan Inlet. Flowing out this way. So if you are new to the channel, or you're just watching, I just like I see a lot of people come in to the stream or watch the videos and pull out, and I don't want to disappoint anybody because they're probably looking for other things. It's difficult to know what category to put this in. Is it flight simulator? Is it educational? You know, it's almost like a podcast, a one-man podcast, really. So, hopefully, we've been seeing a gradual increase of followers and subscribers, and hopefully that will mean there'll be a good core audience going forwards. Actually, on the way, then, let's talk about the problem that happens here. So, these Chinooks and 5 scouts essentially are racing forwards, and you can see, I believe one of these, this here where my white dot is now, is Fitzroy. They rush forwards. The problem is that there are British, I presume SAS observers in the mountains above Fitzroy, and Bluff Cove, and they are unaware that there are any friendly troop movements in this area. And so they assume that these helicopters are Argentinian, especially because they know they've only got one Chinook. So they assumed it's an Argentinian aircraft. And what's happened is, because Mount Kent has been captured, and that's behind here as well, there is a full battery of 105mm guns behind Mount Kent, and so the forward observers radio in these movements to this battery, because they're not aware that it's friendly. And the barrage is only just checked because the spotters have a second thoughts on what's going on. So there is an example there where there clearly could have been a disaster where there would have been serious casualties to a company of 2 para, and they could have also destroyed the one remaining Chinook aircraft. And that's all comes from this, I suppose, haste or speed that 2 para was trying to push on and to get to these positions. And then, of course, the worrying thing is that there was no communication back up the chain of command in order to be able to notify others in the area that there are friendly troop movements going on. By the way, this down here is Elephant Island. Just to note that, we'll come back to that in a minute. And we're going to approach now Fitzroy and Bluff Cove from the south. Now, the next day, Wilson has informed Major General Moore, and he's aware of what's happened here, that A Company have got there, and of course Moore then decides, okay, we're going to support this initiative by Wilson. And so he provides the 2 Sea King helicopters, and essentially transports the rest of 2 para from Goose Green to Fitzroy. And that's on the next day, which is, I think, around the 4th of June. Now, there is another issue here as well, is that when they get to Fitzroy, remember that there was a telephone line from Swan Inlet to Fitzroy, but Wilson back at Goose Green can't contact his troops now at Fitzroy. It's out of radio range. So remember that. We're going to come back to that. That's going to be important too, coming up. So on the evening of the 5th and 6th of June, so 2 para have arrived and they're here. This is Fitzroy. Let's do a quick circle around Fitzroy and Bluff Cove, and then we'll take another break. So if you, just to give you an insight, over here is Stanley. This is the airport over here. So you can see how easy it is for Argentine observers to spot any movements in this area here. So you can see how this isn't a great place to come in at. Let's fly down low and we'll get a decent look at Fitzroy. This is live weather, by the way, so it's a nice winter's evening here, winter's day, down on the Falklands. And my sim seems to be stuttering a bit. This is Fitzroy here. And this is, I believe this is called Pleasant Harbour. So this will be the scene, I believe, of the bombing of the Sir Galahad in this area here. And you can see then Bluff Cove is over this this water here. Now, to go all the way around this cove, I think it's around about 15 miles to go all the way round and to the other side, Bluff Cove here. But there is, or was, a bridge just here where my white dot is. Again, we'll come back to that because that's going to play an important part in the whole events coming up. And this is Bluff Cove. It's essentially just a very narrow inlet into a bay, but there's and these are the mountains behind, and we've got Mount Kent behind here. So you can see how British observers up here on these mountains behind Bluff Cove, the heights here, could see these helicopters that were arriving down at Fitzroy. And so we're here at Bluff Cove. We'll just go up to this ridge, we'll spin around. You should be able to see Stanley in the distance. This is, I think this road is reasonably modern. I think it might have been improved since 1982. And we're going to get into the area essentially now where some of the main battles occurred and in this series of mountains going down towards Stanley in the distance there. You can see here examples of these sort of anybody who's familiar with walking in the Lake District, these sort of scree, rocky areas, makes it very difficult to cross. We'll see numbers of these in some of the battle areas. And as we come up here, now you can see over to our left now, this is Salvador sort of bay. And we're essentially looking now at, I'm not going to say which one it is, but one of these ones is Mount Kent. And so the British artillery is down in this area behind Mount Kent. And you can see over to the right now the numerous hills, mountains that need defensive positions on the way to Stanley. Let's just spin around. So we can now look, we're looking towards Estancia. This is where the forward sort of distribution points were set up. Teal Inlet was being used. In fact, two LCUs, these landing craft, were being used from, I think it was Fearless, to transport materials into this inlet, Teal Inlet. So we'll spin around. I think the artillery's in somewhere down this area here, and this is the route that from this direction here that the 3 Para and 45 Commando would do their walks. So we bend round now. You can see then that the view from these mountains down back towards Bluff Cove and Fitzroy, so you can see how easy it is for them to spot any movement down here. Right, we will take a quick break there. I'm trying to get my sim to I might have to restart the PlayStation and see if I can fix the gremlins and issues. There's probably some sunspots going on. Definitely a few pixies. And when we come back, what we can do is we can look into the movement then of the beginning of the movement of the Scots Guards around this southern part of the Falklands into Fitzroy here. So I will take a small break, have a glass of water, and try and restart the sim. And when we come back, we'll carry on our chat about this deadly lull. This is between the 29th and the 8th of June, and we're around about the 5th of June right now. And welcome back to the channel. Hopefully we might have fixed it a little bit, the issues that we had. I hope you can hear me. So this is, as I say, this is looking back from the heights down to Bluff Cove and Fitzroy. Bluff Cove is to our left here, and this is Fitzroy Harbour. Sorry, welcome anybody who's just joined. You're probably going, what's this crazy guy on about? We're following essentially the story of the Falklands War. We've got to the 5th of June 1982, and what we're looking at is what's known as, I'm calling this thing called the Deadly Lull. It ends in disaster, but it could definitely have ended in absolute catastrophe, and we're going to get to the reason for this catastrophe. So on the evening of the 5th and 6th of June, we start getting the movement of the troops, the 5th Brigade that arrived. They're in San Carlos, which is over here, this bay here, and essentially the Scots Guards, the 2nd Battalion of Scots Guards, are loaded onto the assault ship, the HMS Intrepid, and they are sailed around on the evening of the 5th and 6th, all the way around this south part of the East Falkland. This is called Lafonia. And they were essentially going to be, the assault ship would get them to this island just here, which is known as Elephant Island. And they would then, essentially they could flood the back of this boat, is one of these assault things, and they can let these, they've got 4 LCUs out, and then they would then move up through these sort of kelp fields to where we are now at Fitzroy, which is just below us. So that's the plan. And what happens though is that the captain of the Intrepid, he has the I suppose it's like the culture of the task force at the time was that these capital ships, or these very important ships, so we're talking about the aircraft carriers, HMS Hermes, HMS Invincible, but also these landing assault ships, the HMS Intrepid and HMS Fearless. The culture that Admiral Woodward had sort of passed through was that these things were so essential to the to the recapture of the Falkland Islands that they couldn't be risked at all. And so the captain of the Intrepid, although tasked to drop these guys off essentially at Elephant Island, which I believe is one of these islands ahead of us. Actually, it might be to the left here. Yeah, so this is Elephant Island just to our left, just there. Rather than dropping dropping these landing craft there, he actually drops them on the other side of this island down here, which is called Lively Island. And so it's essentially he drops them off at this area down here, adding probably very cold, wet 5 or 6, 7 miles of open ocean travel for these probably very seasick Scots Guards. Now, this is when it gets even more incredible. Woodward has got 2 ships out here, and when I say out here, I mean stationed about 5 miles off the coast. And these are HMS Cardiff and HMS Yarmouth. And what they're doing, or have been, or trying to do, is they're coming in to within 5 miles of the coast, because they're trying to essentially shoot down there's a known Argentine transport flight that's coming in, flying low along the south part of the East Falkland Islands, and they're essentially trying to and then coming into Stanley, and they're essentially trying to shoot down this transport aircraft. And the captain of these ships have not been informed by Woodward. Woodward has failed to inform them that there is going to be friendly activity in the area. So you can see how crazy this is, that you've got these ships operating out here and not even knowing that there will be ships here. Now, if it was HMS Intrepid going across here, they would probably recognise that. But because Intrepid is over here and has dropped these LCUs, they're not aware of them being in this area. I'm just going to spin around, so keep in mind that part. Now, actually, I'll just jump out here, and probably be easier to spin around with the camera. Get you an overall position. So we can see middle of the picture now is Swan Inlet, and Swan Inlet House at the end there. You have RAF Mount Pleasant and RAF just here in the middle as well, and there's behind it is Mount Pleasant itself, and then of course up here is Fitzroy and Bluff Cove. Now these ships are stationed out here, and they're essentially looking in this direction here for this Argentine transport aircraft. And they want to basically engage this aircraft with Sea Dart, I think it is. Might be Sea Wolf, I can't remember, one of the two. Now, as now you can see the way that these ships are moving up here, they have to try to keep out of the line of sight from Stanley, and so that's why they're trying to keep within close to the coastline, so that the exocets that are known to be at Stanley can't see them. And this is Stanley up here, and you got the end. Here's a place called Hooker's Point. Anyway, they can basically fire south from essentially this area here. So they have to, if they're coming up this coastline, they want to try and keep as much as possible to the right hand side here, so that they're not within Exocet range. Now, the Exocet missile range was believed to be 20 miles, which would put it around about here. And this was why I think Elephant Island, which is this one here, would be the place that Intrepid would try to get to, because it didn't want to expose itself to the Exocet missiles. The problem is that this mobile unit that they've got, the Argentines, meant that they could actually possibly fire another 5 miles to essentially the top of this island here, Lively. Now, as the Scots Guards LCUs are coming around this island, There's believed to be they see an explosion, and it's believed that it's actually an Exocet missile or something like that. I think it has been fired towards HMS Cardiff. So Cardiff is essentially quite nervous. Let's put it that way. At this point, now at the same time, Cardiff, which was, as we say, is stationed possibly out here in this area, picks up a radar contact, and the radar contact is towards Mount Pleasant, which is essentially just in the center here, and is exactly where they would expect this Argentine transport aircraft to be. And so at 8 minutes past, or just after, it's 8 minutes past 12 in the morning of the 6th of June, so just after midnight, they fire, I think it's a sea dart, a sea dart at this target. And so this sea dart will fly up here, and it hits the target about here, and that's the target is destroyed. The problem is this is not the Argentine transport aircraft. This is a Gazelle helicopter, and it's carrying members of the Royal Signal Corps. And if you remember back in the previous part, there was a lack of radio contact between Fitzroy, which is here, and Goose Green, which is down here. And this Brigadier Wilson, had sent this Gazelle with these Royal Signal Corps, essentially to set up a radio relay point around this area, and so that Wilson could communicate with the people, the two para who were at Fitzroy. And so this aircraft is shot down, and it crashes in this area here. And I'm not sure, but you might see there's possibly a memorial stone here. I'm not sure exactly. Where it crashed, but you might see the memorial stone maybe around here. It could be something like that. If anybody knows, then let me know. Remember that this whole airfield didn't exist back then, so it's in this area anyway. The captain of HMS Cardiff was Captain Harris. And I don't know why, but he had, it's believed that he just had a niggling feeling about this target, and that the target might not have been Argentinian. And essentially what goes on now in this next day for HMS Cardiff is a bit of a dark time. So they've managed to accidentally shoot down an Army Air Corps Gazelle. And just as that happens, and he's having these sort of doubts about what's occurred, these 4 dots appear on his radar, and these are the LCUs of the Scots Guards coming around this island here. Now, he has not been told that there is any friendly activity in this area that he was expecting. And so you could assume, with him being shot at from Stanley. So there's a heightened sort of awareness of the situation, that it would be not unreasonable for him to engage these dots on his radar. But because he has got this nagging doubt in his mind, rather than opening up on these dots, he decides instead to fire a star shell above them. And when the star shell bursts, the LCUs consider running to shore. They consider diving back into shore here. But Cardiff would signals them to heave to and messages them friend or foe. And so, because the captain showed caution at this point, this a near not a catastrophe was possibly avoided, and they could have literally have sunk the whole of the 2nd Battalion of the Scots Guards. And then to top it all, Cardiff's Lynx was supporting shore observation bombardment, developed I believe a gearbox issue, diverted to HMS Arrow, and was almost shot down by friendly fire from HMS Arrow. This is the evening of the 5th and 6th. The Scots Guards managed to move up here and eventually comes around the corner and into Fitzroy. And so, and then start offloading here. So there's 4 LCUs here from the Intrepid. Okay, on that note then, we now have, in summary, we've now got 2 para here. And we've now got 2nd Battalion of the Scots Guards have arrived. And when we come back, we'll look at the events then on the 6th and 7th of June, as the second wave of reinforcements are brought round by HMS Fearless, and they're carrying the Welsh Guards. Right, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you have and you're watching live, please click a follow for me. It'd be really cool. For some reason, Twitch thinks I should get to 100 followers, but I do this anyway. It doesn't matter. Don't worry. If you're on YouTube, again, like, subscribe, and all that sort of stuff. But again, don't worry. If I'm going to have a break now. You'll hear some music. If you want that music, it's free. You just follow the link in the on the screen, and you can pick that up free, just as a thank you for watching. So if you are on Twitch and you're live, I will be back in a couple of minutes. Don't go away. And welcome back to Flight Past. Good to see you. Good to see people are watching. And let's just like to say thank you for everyone who does watch and participates. It's always appreciated. For those new to the channel, my name is Simon. The channel is called Flight Past, and the idea is that we use Flight Simulator, and this is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and because it's got satellite imagery and photogrammic photography, we essentially can get a recreation of the Earth in 1-to-1, and this allows us basically to go anywhere on the planet and have a look at stuff. And I found that I could use this then to explore key moments in history and essentially have a look at the distances, the topography, the slopes, the shapes of things, the buildings, whatever, and get a better understanding then of the decisions that were made at the time. And so in this series we're following, as you can see on the top left hand corner there, we're following the Falklands War. And if you're new to the channel, in the middle is the location that we're talking about, and on the right hand side is the general time. And this is we've done a number of these series now. We've done one on D-Day, and we've done one on Waterloo. As you can go and check them out, go over to YouTube, find the channel Flight Past, and you'll be able to watch them back. The idea of these is that they're always live. I'm flying live and I'm talking live, and it allows you guys to join in, and you can become my co-pilot and help me out in anything you want. You can point out facts I've got wrong. You can point out what the flashing light on the dashboard means. All that sort of stuff. Be part of the stream and hopefully get a bit of... and together we can sort of investigate some of these moments in history. So I'm just the host. I'm leading the discussion, and this discussion that I'm leading today is what I'm calling the deadly lull, and it's a deadly lull between the surrender of the Argentine forces at Goose Green on the 29th of May, and then the bombing of Sir Galahad up here at Fitzroy on the 8th of June. It was a disaster. There's no beating around the bush, but as we discussed in the last part, it could have been even worse, because there was a potential friendly fire incident could have happened. It did happen in the sense that a helicopter got shot down, a Gazelle with an Army Air Corps Gazelle over at Mount Pleasant got shot down, but they also could have been a blue-on-blue, where essentially these LCUs carrying the Scots Guards crossing this bay here were almost engaged by HMS Cardiff and HMS Yarmouth, who are operating in this area here. The whole sequence of events from the 29th of May has basically been where aggressive nature of some forces showing initiative, but there's been a lack of command, a chain of command. So there's a lot of the left hand is not knowing what the right hand is doing, and it's led to a number of issues. We almost had a blue-on-blue action at Fitzroy when this 2 para arrives in a Chinook, observed on the mountains behind here, and almost fired upon by British artillery. There was a blue-on-blue action on a Gazelle helicopter, as I said, carrying the Royal Signal Corps, who would come to establish a radio connection between Goose Green and Fitzroy. And there was also almost a catastrophe when HMS Cardiff almost engages with the 2nd Battalion of the Scots Guards, and it's only the sort of niggling feeling of the captain of HMS Cardiff, who his name was Captain Harris. He had a niggling feeling that what the aircraft that he had shot down wasn't actually an Argentinian one, and that made him be a bit more cautious when he was faced with these radar marks on his screen. And essentially, so the Woodward, the Navy, the Army have not been talking to each other, and they're not aware of each other's activities around this in this area. And so, but we managed to get the Scots Guards into Fitzroy, and this was on the evening of the 6th. In the morning of the 6th. And then, as I say, on the 6th and 7th of June, it was the turn of HMS Fearless, another assault landing ship, to bring the Welsh Guards around the bottom of East Falkland. Now, if you've been following along, I mentioned before, over on the other side of these mountains here is an inlet called Salvador, and 2 of the LCUs of Fearless was being used over there to transport materials into Teal Inlet, as Brigadier Thompson was trying to establish a forward base prior to the attack on these mountains going down towards Stanley on our right. And so Fearless, carrying the Welsh Guards, is actually only carrying 2 LCUs, so the carrying capacity of Fearless is less. Now, Fearless, though, is a little bit more fearless than HMS Intrepid. HMS Intrepid decided to drop off the Scots Guards down here to try to protect his ship, but Fearless actually moves up and essentially drops off the Welsh Guards LCUs approximately where we are now, for the run-in towards Port Pleasant, which is just down here on the left. Fearless arrives here at around about 2 o'clock in the morning of the 7th of June. And this is another example of poor command. It's only got 2 LCUs, as we say. And it decides for some reason that the priority to off-ship at this point was going to be the HQ sections of the Welsh Guards and their Land Rovers, and they didn't prioritise the actual rifle companies to come off. Now, the reason why they weren't so worried about these 2 LCUs was because they believed that there would be 4 LCUs from Intrepid sat here at Fitzroy, but there isn't. And why isn't there? Well, on the 6th of June, the morning of the 6th of June, these LCUs have dropped off the Scots Guards, because Scots Guards were arriving here at Fitzroy, and essentially they were taking over from 2 Para. Now, 2 Para, we've seen what they did at Goose Green. Their forward action, I suppose, have this sort of bravado about them that's trained into them in forming initiative. And they essentially weren't going to sit around in Fitzroy with the Scots Guards. They were going to move forwards. And Chris Keeble, Major Chris Keeble, was in charge, and he spots these LCUs and thinks it's an opportunity essentially to move his troops over to Bluff Cove on our right. And the reason why he wants these LCUs is because this the journey to walk around this inlet here was around about 15 miles, and it would normally be shorter because there was a bridge just where this white dot is. But this bridge was destroyed by the Argentines as they pulled out. Now, the culture of the whole exercise, the whole war so far was that this has got to be done quickly. Pressure was on, and so there's a pressure to sort of move forwards as quickly as possible. And so Chris Keeble, Major Chris Keeble, just said, right, well, we'll commandeer these LCUs and take our 2-para across. So I'm just going to jump out here, so you can see this. Just let this terrain load in. You can probably just make out the bridge here. I'm not sure if it's actually ever been repaired since. But you can see it. I think it's here. Just let that load in. And this is the bridge that was taken out. Now, the Commander Southby Taylor. Now remember, the radio command has not been great between Fitzroy and Goose Green. Southby Taylor was sort of the guy in charge of these LCUs, and he'd ordered them to remain at Fitzroy because the Welsh Guards were going to be coming in. So they could therefore help offload the Welsh Guards over here. But he had to go back to Goose Green because as we spoke, there's this radio communication problem, and Keeble essentially takes 3 of these LCUs, at least 3, I think. Possibly, there's rumours of a waved pistol when some of these LCU pilots wouldn't cooperate. But he takes 3 of them and he moves 2-para essentially around this area here and across to Bluff Cove. So when HMS Fearless has dropped off their 2 LCUs and the Welsh Guards start moving in, they find that there isn't the other LCUs aren't here, and for some reason, though, as I say, they prioritised their HQ Land Rovers in the first wave. They prioritised a Recce HQ and support, but they left the 2 rifle companies, a sapper section and a signals attachment on the Fearless itself, and this is Buff Cove here. So there isn't enough time, half of the capability to offload, and so there's not enough time for Fearless to offload everybody, and with light approaching, or they had to make sure that this important ship, the Fearless, was back essentially at San Carlos before light. And so Fearless returns with these 2 rifle companies on board and fails to offload them. So these Welsh troops have moved all the way around in the night, and then they have to go all the way back to San Carlos. And when they get back to San Carlos, they're then transferred essentially to Sir Galahad on the 7th of June. Now, the offloading or the transfer to Sir Galahad, I'm not sure why that happened. Maybe they were just expecting, they were just going to, they couldn't risk the Fearless again, or I can't remember if Fearless was needed somewhere else. Not sure. But anyway, when the transfer over to the Sir Galahad was happening on the 7th, there was a delay, I believe, involving 6 field ambulance that was also going to come across with them, and this meant that the Sir Galahad leaving San Carlos was delayed until about 8:30 in the evening. Now that meant that the captain of the Sir Galahad essentially petitions the head of the Navy assault part of the task force, which his name was, who's Clapp, his name was. He petitioned him basically to say that he now didn't have enough time to get around the south part of the island, offload these troops, and then get back to San Carlos. And then he petitioned basically so that he could delay that movement until the evening of the 8th. But Clapp denies the captain that request, and so the Sir Galahad will move around on the 8th, on the 7th, in the evening of the 7th, and arriving on the morning of the 8th. When they get here, there's a problem, because the LCUs that were brought round to here got stormbound. So the ones that Major Chris Keeble had commandeered are stormbound over here. So when Sir Galahad comes into Port Pleasant, which is essentially this this area here, and the LCUs aren't there. They're not there to help offload these troops. And the Welsh Guards officers on the Sir Galahad, rather than just offloading, were insisting that the Sir Galahad would transfer them over to Bluff Cove, even though the Scots Guards and the sappers had already completed the repairs on this bridge. The Welsh Guard officers wanted the men to be transferred over by Sir Galahad. Whether there was confusion about whether the bridge had been repaired or not, we don't know. And so what happens then is that in that confusion and arguments, you essentially now have the Sir Galahad sitting out here. I think you could possibly remember, if you ever remember a shot, an infamous shot, it might be looking out this way with the Sir Galahad sat out there on a day very similar to this. There was very clear weather. And of course we know that the Argentines could see this position, or could see the movement here from these mountains on over this side here, Mount Harriet. They could see the movement of the ships into this bay. And they organize an attack, and they organize an attack in a way that essentially guarantees aircraft over this target. And that's because they send, first of all, they send an aircraft against Plymouth in the Falklands Sound, and that attack, not only was it, I think it leads to the Plymouth being damaged, but it draws off the combat air patrol. So the combat air patrol, the Harriers, are operating over the island, and they're drawn off to chase off these attacks on Plymouth around San Carlos. And this allows essentially some Skyhawk aircraft. I think there was 5 Skyhawk aircraft. Oops. And they would come across the south part of the island and essentially catch Sir Galahad and I think it was Sir Tristram in these waters. So they were flying across here, and they dropped 500-pound bombs. And there's also Sir Tristram. There was also Sir Lancelot here. So 2 500-pound bombs would hit Sir Lancelot. They didn't explode, but they did cause a fire, and 3 bombs would hit Sir Galahad, and essentially leads to 48 men would die when basically a fireball rages through the tank deck, and 2 people die on Sir Lancelot. Later on as well, there's a follow-up air raid, but by that time I think the cap was re-established, and 3 of the 4 Skyhawks that were attacked were downed by 2 Harriers. And and to top it all as well, on this day an LCU is travelling from Goose Green with 2 para equipment, and I believe somewhere around this area, I think, let me just check. So yeah, it was the LCU F4 is attacked essentially just here by Mare Harbour, approximately just here, and that is hit and sunk, and that's at about 4:45. So Sir Galahad and Sir Tristram were bombed and at 1:10, and Sir Tristram was burnt as well. So 1:10 in the afternoon, daylight, and these ships are sat just here in this harbour. And as I say, these LCUs are here, they get sunk, and 3 Skyhawks are shot down between around about 10 to 5 in the afternoon in this area as well. Essentially around this point here, as these Skyhawks are racing in and essentially trying to capture the British in the open. So you can see how that whole series of events, going all the way back to Wilson giving permission to Keble to fly into Fitzroy, and then the whole sort of debacle about the transport of Scots Guards and the bravado. You could argue that there was almost like too much of a race going on at this point, but that sort of speed, more so much. They needed more speed, less haste, possibly. Leads to these sort of small things that build up to the point where you end up essentially with a lack of transport, and for some reason leaving your human cargo exposed on a ship. And as we said before, the point where the army and the navy meets is never a very good place. because it means that the army can't run away and hide, and the navy has to be too close to the land. So they're never a good place to be, and this is one example of a terrible place where the navy is meeting the army, and essentially this is a very exposed point, and the Argentine Air Force takes advantage of it. So that seems to be that's the sort of end of that section that I wanted to talk about today. So if you have any questions, then please leave them in the comments. That'd be really cool. So in summary, then, well, we're going to look next time. We're going to look at the movement from San Carlos on this side here, the northern part, and we're going to come up behind this mountain here, which is Mount Kent, and we're going to see essentially the movement here of 3 para and the Royal Marines as they approach Stanley, as you can see in the distance there, and coming down essentially into Stanley. So these mountains here are going to be the focus of the final sections of the war, and you could argue then this insertion here of the 5th Army Brigade probably might not have been necessary. It causes unnecessary delays. It puts a greater strain on an already strained logistical support. And it's argued that this could have been done without it. Essentially, then what we get is from this point, actually, you do see much more inter-service support. The commander, Royal Marines, will come down and support the Scots Guards eventually. But this should have happened way before. So there's a weak leadership at the top. The minister, John Knott, he shows that weak leadership, and he should have knocked out this inter-service rivalry right from the beginning. The 5th Brigade insertion, as I say, is probably not even necessary, putting too much strain on the logistical logistics already. And then you get people like Woodward, Wilson, Clapp, and even Keeble. They have a gross collective lapse. This is a quote from Huey in his book, and he says, "There was a gross collective lapse from the sustained good judgment their rank demanded, and their men deserved, and their nation had a right to expect." And you can see from the nature of these events in this section down here, it was very, very. You can understand that there will be blue on blue action, but it's not acceptable that captains of ships sent down here to tasked with shooting something down is not made aware that there is friendly activity right in front of him. I mean, that is just completely unacceptable. And so whether Woodward knew about it or someone never passed it to him, then there's the command or the people in charge of making these movements have made a slip up, a big slip up. But they should never have been put in the position to make that slip up is my argument. So that is the deadly lull then in the Falklands War, and you can tell it's a massive a cluster mess up because we British people were never told about this. This was always been something that was sort of quietly slept under the carpet. The way that they do the sort of they look back at these things and sort of learn lessons. Is usually a few years later when everything's sort of passed by. But you can tell usually where the careers of some of these people go after this, exactly what the armed forces thought of their actions. Right. So as I say, this was a good place to leave it. And we will be back probably going to in the next day. Same time, UK time, usually around about lunchtimes as I stream, so if you want to join me, you can do that. And we will be looking then at essentially the movement of the 3 Para and 45 Commando, Royal Marine Commando, and we'll look at the preliminary build-up of the British forces as they cross the island here. Now, I'm going to finish up here, and for anybody who's watching back, I've just triggered an advert on Twitch because people seem to come in for some reason when there's an advert on, and I'm gonna follow up. What we're just going to do is we'll just use the helicopter for a little bit, come up here again, and we'll just do a fly down into Stanley. So we've got now to, as I said, the 8th of June, and then we're going to, in the next section, we'll look at the movements into this area here. This is Salvador Inlet. We'll try and find Teal Inlet. We'll try and find Estancia House. We'll try to start putting some names to these mountains. So we're looking out for mountains like, well, common names you're going to be experiencing a lot is going to be Mount Kent. We're going to look at battles for Longdon, Two Sisters, Harriet, and then Tumbledown, Wireless Ridge, as we eventually come into the final defensive positions around Stanley, and then we get to the surrender of the Argentines. So we're going to be looking for evidence still in the terrain for bombardments. I think if we look Longdon and Two Sisters, we should see quite a lot of cratering still. But some of the, I think some of the artillery or mortars were not as effective as they would be because the peat was essentially soaking up lots of the explosions. And we can basically just see if we can see any evidence of the war still in the satellite imagery. So yeah, we're going to have so we're going to put some names to these mountains. So I think we'll look over on the left. Will be Longdon. I think it's over here somewhere. A Wireless Ridge, I think, might be down here. Tumbledown. These are the sort of famous names and famous battles that we got. Two Sisters, I believe, might be this mountain here. And it looks like my similarly is looking to suffer a bit. And essentially the British start rolling down these mountains. And we can just discuss as well the times, the effectively, the fact that Woodward was saying that he was about 10 days away from having to pull some of his ships out because the ships were literally rotting on the sea as he was speaking. So yeah, we're going to be discussing some of these hills. We got Longdon, Two Sisters, Harriet, Wireless Ridge, Tumbledown, and we'll see if we can find some evidence of bombardment, cratering, trenches, all that sort of stuff, and that will be coming up in the next stream. So if you are new to it, I'm just coming to the end of the stream. Actually, I usually stream for about 2 hours, and we've been discussing the Falklands War, and we've been slowly moving around. I think this is about the 5th or 6th 2-hour stream that we've done, and today we've been looking at this thing called the Deadly Lull, and it was a time between the surrender of the Argentine forces at Goose Green and the bombing of Sir Galahad on the 8th of June. It was characterised by poor leadership on the British side, blue-on-blue actions, friendly fire, possible almost catastrophes, as the pressure of trying to resolve the war before the depths of a South Atlantic winter sets in. And there's a race on, essentially, and not many people knew, but our task force was essentially getting to a point where they would have to retire, and so it would have to plans would have had to have gone in for essentially doing what's known as a rock carrier or a stone carrier, and trying to weather out the South Atlantic winter. So a lot of the pressure on the UK forces is to get the job done, and the two forces, two units that are well known for getting things done very quickly, are the Royal Marines and the paratroopers. So yeah, that will be when we come back. Then we'll start talking about how Brigadier Thompson starts ordering the Royal Marines and the paratroopers to either Yomp or Tab across the island. Why they had to do it, because of the sinking of the Atlantic conveyor, and that denied them 4 of their Chinooks, and then having to move supplies up to this end of this inlet here called Estancia. How they managed to seize the Mount Kent from the Argentines, that allows them to bring up their artillery to behind Mount Kent, and that enables essentially then a series of battles over about 3 days, forces the Argentines back into Port Stanley. And when the guns then are looking down on them from Tumbledown, the Argentines then decide to surrender. Okay, so we'll just head now into Stanley itself. If you are watching, I thank you for getting this far. Please hit a like, subscribe, follow, love, hug, all that sort of stuff. If you've got any questions, then please leave them, and I will always answer them, and I will try and answer them on air. And otherwise, that looks like it's coming up exactly on 2 hours, and I will say thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.